All right, good evening. Here we are at the chapel for our Old Testament studies. We've made it in Exodus to chapter 21. What would you do if you were in charge of maybe over 1 million Israelites that their entire life had been slaves to the Egyptians, and now you've taken them like Moses did out into the wilderness on their way to the promised land, and they've never had any restraints other than their taskmasters right over them with a whip all the time. So they've got this newfound freedom. So you know what you're going to have. You're going to have all kinds of conflict, and what do we do? What do we do? So Moses is learning on the fly too. At first, he's trying to, everybody bringing their problems to Moses, and he's having to make decisions, telling them what to do. Then his daddy-in-law Jethro comes, remember, and says, that's too much for you. Says, divide it into groups and let people, you have captains over 50s and so on. And if anything's really hard, they bring that to you, but you can have underlings helping with you there too. Get organized, you have to do, Moses. So that's exactly what happens. But now God's given him laws. They're going to have laws that they're going to have to follow. He's given them the 10 Commandments. But the 10 Commandments, they're kind of general over laws, but you get down to the nitty-gritty stuff, and well, how does this fit? How do we do here? And that's where we're going to pick up in these following chapters about some of the minor things about, it's already settled. It's in the book. Here's what the book says. And as Americans, our laws come from this book, Judeo-Christian laws. And while we read them back here that was going on thousands of years ago with Moses and those people, and we kind of chuckle at some of them about what do you do if your ox gores another. But yet the principle is set down there that we still go by a lot of these things. Let the punishment fit the crime. But here we are, chapter 21, as we work our way through here. Now, first of all, these are about slaveries. But well, is the Bible teaching slavery? Well, in this case, it's kind of a different kind of slavery. It's voluntary slavery. You could sell yourself as an indentured servant to work for somebody else, and you make a contract, and you have to honor your side of the deal. Your owner or boss has to honor the other side of the deal. It's sort of the same way today. We're a lot like that today. You enter into a contract with somebody, and God says, now that contract can't go for more than 6 years. So let's look at this. Now, these are the judgments which you set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years shall he serve. See, he's serving another Hebrew. And the 7th year, new deal. He gets to go out free for nothing. So he's made a 6-year contract with you. If he came in by himself, he can go out by himself. If he came in with a wife, if he was married, then his wife goes back with him. It's a family deal here. And if his master has given him a wife after he's become his slave, employee we call them today, she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children, that's still his master's. He don't get that. I mean, he can stay. He'll go out by himself if he goes out. And if the servant shall plainly say, well, I like working here. I want to stay. I love my master. I love my wife. I love my kids. And I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. They'll make a new deal. He shall bring him to the door or into the doorpost. He'll lean over and put his ear on the doorpost, and they're going to poke a hole in it. It's a piercing. It's the first piercing. His master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he'll serve him forever. When you saw a man who had a hole in his ear and an earring in it, you said he belongs to somebody else. And if a man sell his daughter to be a maid servant, she shall not go out as the men servant do. Different set of rules for her. If she please not her master, who hath betrothed her to himself, he's actually engaged to her now, then let her be redeemed. If he decides if she ain't what he wanted, she can be redeemed, bought back. To sell her, but now to sell her to a strange nation, he have no power. He can't do that. Her daddy can take her back, seeing he's dealt deceitfully with her. Now, you can apply these basic laws to the Christian life too. Before we became Christians, we were betrothed. We were serving the devil, right? He was our master. But Christ has redeemed us back from him. He bought us back with the cross of Calvary, on the cross of Calvary. And if he's betrothed her to his son, he's promised her to his son, this guy gets this made, He shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. She'll just be like a daughter to him, daughter-in-laws we call them. And if he takes him another wife, her food, her clothes, her duty of marriage shall not diminish. And if he do not these three unto her, then she's set free without money. He that smites, now we're getting into laws that are going to be very applicable to our society today too. He that smites a man so that he die, he will surely be put to death. So murderers are given capital punishment. And I've had people ask me before, and a legitimate question, said, how can you be pro-life on the one end, but for capital punishment on the other end? They think it's an inconsistency. But if you think it out, you say, no, it's just because as Christians we have such a high esteem of God-given life that if somebody takes that life by murdering somebody else, then they have to pay the ultimate price with their own life. That's honoring life. And if a man lie not in wait, we call that being premeditated murder. If he lie not in wait, but God deliver him to his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. Somebody killed somebody accidentally. It wasn't premeditated. Maybe something happened. And God says, I'm going to make a special place that you can flee to. Even though you're guilty, you can flee. They became known as later cities of refuge. There's certain cities of refuge that somebody could flee to and you couldn't touch them. That was just grace. They were guilty, but God made a place they could go to. As long as it wasn't premeditated murder, you couldn't go get them. And it's kind of like today we're guilty before God as sinners, but God's made a refuge in the cross of Christ that we can flee to and we won't be punished. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor, so he's planned this now, to slay him with guile or deceit, then he shall take him from my altar that he may die. I don't care if he did go to my city of refuge. If he killed that man presumptuously, you can go get him. And he that smites his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. Remember, we just got the 10 Commandments. Wasn't that the fifth one, to honor your mother and your father? And he that steals a man, we call that kidnapping today, and sells him, or if he be found in his hand, he'll be put to death. Capital punishment for kidnapping. And he that curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. If men strive together and one smite another with a stone or with his fist, they're fighting and one of them picks up something and he hits the other one with it, but he dies not, but keepeth his bed. He's become disabled over this fight. Somebody hit him with something. If he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, then he that smote him shall be quit or acquitted. You're going to have to pay damages, but if he gets over it, you're set free from it. Only, even then, if he got over it and he got healed up and he's walking again, only he shall pay for the loss of his time. Whoever hit him still got to pay for the loss of his time that he was unable to work. And you got to pay his medical expenses too. Cause him to be thoroughly healed. See, these apply to today too, don't they? And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished. Just because they're yours don't mean you can beat on them like that. Notwithstanding, if he continues a day or two, he'll not be punished, for he's his money. If you've damaged him, then you don't have to pay a court cost, because if he's not unable to work for a few days, you're paying for it anyway. And if men strive, which is all the more reason why you treat them right, right? You wanted to treat your slave right, because if you hurt him and he wasn't able to work for you, then it's getting in your pocketbook. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, two guys get in a fight and there's a pregnant lady there, so that her fruit depart from her, now you've caused her to miscarry, and yet no mischief follow, I think that means if it survives, he shall be surely punished, according to the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. That's going to court and he's going to be punished. But if any harm or mischief follow, I think that means if it dies, then you'll give life for life. And if that's talking about the fetus, any harm coming to it, then the Bible's recognizing that fetus as life. And you'll pay with your life. You think that don't happen today? If a drunk runs over a pregnant lady driving a car and kills her and the fetus, that's double murder. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe, which is all just a way of saying, let the punishment fit the crime. And if a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he's mistreating them, and he puts out an eye, then they'll get to go free from their contract, for that 6-year contract, for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth, if he knocks his tooth out, or the maid's tooth, they can go free for the tooth's sake. Now, don't you know these are things that Moses was having to deal with every day? If an ox gore a man or a woman and they die, somebody's ox gored somebody. Now, this is going to be especially important when they get to the promised land and they've got all their own properties and stuff, right? If an ox gore a man or a woman that they die, then the ox will surely be stoned. If you got an animal that kills somebody, then that animal's just got to be put down. And his flesh shall not be eaten, ain't even fit to eat. But the owner of the ox shall be acquitted. Quit in the old KJV. But if the ox were wont to push with his horn in times past, and it had been testified to his owner, somebody's come to the owner said, you better put that ox up. Said, it's been out there chasing people and it's been pushing around on them. But he didn't. And you've not kept him in, but that he killed a man or a woman after that, then that ox will be stoned. And his owner also is guilty, because he should have done something about it by then. He'll be put to death too. His ox killed him, and he's getting capital punishment for that. If there be laid on him a sum of money, then shall he give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him. In other words, the owner can avoid the death penalty by paying back restitution in some way. What's restitution? For somebody got killed, right? But we do it every day in court, right? Somebody's awarded a big amount of money for wrongful death. Whether he's gored a son or gored a daughter, according to this punishment shall it be done unto him. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox will be stoned. All these little details about the minute differences in the crimes. And if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit, and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein, the owner of the pit shall make it good, and give money to the owner of them, and the dead beast will be his too. Now, you think this don't still apply today? If you go out there and dig a swimming pool, I believe the state requires you to put a fence around it after you've dug that, or you're liable for a lot of things, aren't you? You can't leave an open pit out there. And if one man's ox hurt another, that he die, then they shall sell the live ox, divide the money of it. The dead ox shall they divide. They'll split up all the meat of everything. Fairness. It's an issue of fairness. Or if it be known that the ox has used to push in times past, and his owner's not kept him in, he'll pay ox for ox, and the dead ox will be his too. There's extra, it's like minute differences in the law. He knew that ox pushed and he killed my ox. Well, then you get his ox and he pays for that one too. There's all kinds of circumstances in a fallen world, isn't there? And somebody once said that the more wicked a society gets, the more laws they have to have. I wonder how many laws are on our books now. There's all these different kind of minute details. It's a lot more than just the 10 Commandments anymore, isn't it? All these things about what happens if. And that's what we're going through here in this chapter. It's kind of like I said before, when I was a boy and you wanted to go hunting, you went to the hardware and you got the game laws on a little piece of 4x4 paper. It had all the seasons and everything on it and what the limits were. That's all there was. Now here in Tennessee, you go and get this big magazine that's hundreds of pages, and you've got to almost be a lawyer to figure out when you can hunt and where you can hunt, and what's open here and what's closed here. And it's really confusing. And I've said before that if you do much hunting and fishing in Tennessee, invariably you're going to do something wrong by mistake one of these days. But if the game warden catches you, then ignorance is no excuse for the law. But it's kind of like God gives us the clear picture here in the Bible of what's right and what's wrong. But even trying the best that we can do, sometimes we find ourselves that we've done wrong, which means we're guilty and deserve to be punished. But thank God that God's fixed that with the cross of Christ, and repentance is still available. See you next week.